YouTube, with the 2024 NBA offseason currently happening at a rapid pace at the time we're recording this video, we talked about a few days ago all the teams in the Western Conference and how I think the NBA's Western Conference could be stronger than it's ever been in this league next season in 2025. Now I want to talk about the East, right? And the Eastern Conference, in my personal opinion, has a chance in 2025 to be stronger than it's been in the last decade or so. We've known for such a long time the Eastern Conference has been way weaker than the Western Conference, and that's something that really hasn't changed much throughout the years, right? The West just stays deep, and it's honestly like every year there's a new team coming out of it. The East, not so much, right? You have a few really great teams, and then, it's a bunch of rebuilding teams, stuff like that. I think the East has been a little top heavy. The thing about the East is they have Boston, right? And, it's going to be a absolute free-for-all to try to dethrone Boston in the Eastern Conference next season, and there's a few teams that could do that. In this video, we're going to do a deep dive on the Eastern Conference, team by team, and then at the end, I'm going to explain why I think this is such a improved Eastern Conference from years past. Let's talk about it, folks. So we got to start at the top, right? And in my opinion, there is a tier S, right? And if I'm making a tier list, tier S is just one team, and I think we all know who that is. It's the Boston Celtics, the reigning NBA champions, right? And while they haven't really made any additions to their team other than their draft picks, what they have done is locked up all of their great players, right? So all their great players are returning for next season. You talk about Derek White, Drew Holiday, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, KP, Al Horford, Peyton Pritchard. All their rotation players are coming back next season. Kristaps Porzingis is set to be injured to start the season, but other than that, things are looking just fine in Boston, just as good as last season. So, the big question in the East is just, can anyone take down Boston, right? I think there are a few teams that have a real shot at it, but Boston is, the team to beat in the East, no question about it, and honestly, the team to beat in the NBA, right? They are going to be the best team in the NBA next season going into it, in the minds of every basketball fan. They're going to be favored to get as far as they were last year. That's just, all that being said, how could the East, from top to bottom be better if Boston is just this unstoppable force? I actually don't think they're that unstoppable now that a couple teams in particular have gotten so much better. In tier 2, in the A tier, I would say, we're going to have 3 teams. And, the third team is me giving them the benefit of the doubt, but, it starts with the New York Knicks, right? They have had such a great offseason. You lose Isaiah Hartenstein. That's a big loss for the Knicks. They will have to replace that backup 5. I don't expect them to be done this offseason in terms of the moves they've made, right? But even if they didn't trade for Mikal Bridges, a two-way versatile all-star caliber player and all NBA defensive player on the wing who's going to fit in New York seamlessly, honestly. You're getting a all-star, all NBA level talent back from injury, and that is Julius Randle. So, even if they didn't make that trade and still lost Isaiah Hartenstein, I would still say that they got better just by getting Randle back, right? Now you bring in Mikal Bridges, you re-sign OG Anunoby. This team is deep. I don't think people are giving the New York Knicks depth enough credit, right? You could have a starting 5 in New York next season that looks like Jalen Brunson, OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges, Julius Randle, and Mitchell Robinson. Off the bench, you could have Deuce McBride, Josh Hart, Dante DiVincenzo, and a couple other role players. I mean, this is, that is an 8-man rotation that is pretty top of the top as far as talent goes. They have a great coach. They have a, hungry fan base. I think the Knicks are of that second tier, no question about it. The second team I have to talk about is my Philadelphia 76ers. I got to represent here. The Sixers, I think, you guys really seem to enjoy my last video where I broke down their offseason so far. Thank you for the support on that. Go Sixers. I think the Sixers have had the best offseason of anybody in the league, and there's still work to be done, right? There's still some depth issues with the Sixers, but they are of that second tier of teams that could challenge Boston, right? If everything goes right, injury-wise for all these teams, I'm not going to be speculating on injuries in this video. We're going to assume everyone's healthy for the fun of it, right? But assuming everyone's healthy, I think the Sixers and the Knicks have as good of a shot as anyone in the league to challenge Boston, and that includes Western Conference teams, in my opinion. Sixers adding Paul George, they already have 2 stars in Embiid and Maxey. Embiid being a top 5 player in the NBA, in my opinion. Maxey being, an all NBA caliber player. Paul George being an all-star caliber player who just is going to make a really good fit with the Sixers. You add Caleb Martin and re-sign Kelly Oubre. You add Andre Drummond for center depth. Draft Jared McCain out of the draft. There's plenty of things to like about the Sixers. And I think, naturally they're going to be in that second tier of team with the Knicks. I give them about a similar chance to beat the Celtics in the playoffs. I don't think it's going to be easy or, even probable, if I'm being honest, but, there is an outside chance. I couldn't really say that last year for a lot of teams. Pretty much every team in the East last year was just going to lose to Boston. I don't see that as being that black and white this season. I think the Sixers and the Knicks have a chance. The third team that has a chance in the same tier is the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, people are going to say, why only 3 teams, not the Pacers? They made the conference finals last year. Well, I gotta say, the Milwaukee Bucks had a terrible end to the season, and honestly, their offseason hasn't gone super well. You lose Malik Beasley. Doc Rivers is kind of, not working out so well so far as the coach of the Bucks, and I would honestly expect that to continue. Damian Lillard and Giannis pairing seems to be not going as well as we thought it would offensively, right? Talking about trading Brook Lopez. I mean, what's going on here, right? Here's the thing about Milwaukee. I actually think, with all that stuff being said and all the stuff I know about Doc Rivers as a Sixers fan, having witnessed the Doc Rivers era, spoiler alert, it didn't go well. I actually think that the Bucks are still, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt here. I think if they're healthy, they're still that great, right? They're still a top 4, contender in this conference, no question, right? They're a little bit separated in my mind from teams that we're going to get into in a little bit, and the reason is simply Giannis Antetokounmpo and Damian Lillard. Not even mentioning Chris Middleton, who had an amazing performance in the 2023 playoffs. He looks like himself again. He's come off that injury, that ACL really seemed to put a damper on his career, but he just looks like himself again. I think that is such an underrated aspect of the Bucks. When you think of the Bucks, you think of Giannis and Dame. Not so much Middleton as of late, but just a couple years ago, man, Middleton was one of the best wings in the entire league. So I think offensively, if Chris Middleton can return to that playoff form that he showed in the playoffs last season, with Giannis absent, and Giannis can stay healthy, I don't see why this team isn't a real legitimate shot to beat any team in the Eastern Conference. I mean, Doc Rivers, has severely had a influence on this team, whether positive or negative, we're gonna have to see. But there's trade talks about Bobby Portis, about Brook Lopez, right? You bring in Chris Dunn to take over that backup point guard spot, adds a little defense in that backcourt. I think that's a good move, but there's a lot not to like about the Bucks. I get it, but I think there's also still a lot to like. So I'm putting them in that tier, giving them the benefit of the doubt. Like I said, it is possible that all that stuff happens again this season. The chaos that happened after Doc Rivers took over, the potential and the ceiling is as high as Sixers and Knicks, but again, we'll have to see. Then you get into the B tier, right? And there's a lot of B tier teams that I think, let's say an injury happens with an A tier team or the only S tier team, right? Not even an injury. Let's just say, things aren't working out well, and, maybe a team hits like a little bit of a slump, they're underperforming. I could see any one of these B tier teams defeating one of these A tier teams that I mentioned, getting all the way to the conference finals or finals. I give them an outside shot, but they do have a shot, and there are more of these teams than, years past, in my opinion. That's why I have the Eastern Conference as such a high contender. As far as the Eastern Conference, it is still pretty top heavy, right? You have your, playoff teams, and then you have your really bottom of the NBA teams that'll no doubt be at the top of the lottery again next season, but there are way more legitimate contenders in the East than I think, in the last few years. So that's why I'm really making this video today. These B tier teams include the Cleveland Cavaliers. We're going to start with the Cleveland Cavaliers, right? They hire Coach Kenny Atkinson. JB Bickerstaff wasn't working out. You re-sign Donovan Mitchell. And I think the power of a new coach in this organization could make a bigger influence than we're expecting, right? You have honestly 4 pieces on this team that are all-star caliber. And you could even make a case you have 4 players on this team next season that could be all NBA caliber, right? You have plenty of depth that, a lot of people are saying the Cavs are really weak, right? Like at the, they have their core 4. I actually don't agree with that. I think on the wing, you have Max Strus, you have George Niang, who underperformed last season. Cavs fans weren't too happy with that contract. I get that, right? I know he has his defensive limitations, but he is a sniper, and hopefully he shoots a little better next season. But you have Karis LeVert. You have a lot of guys that can score, right? I like Craig Porter Jr. as a backup guard. You have plenty of things going for you for Cleveland. This is a team that, like I said, with a new coach and a new system, I think could be right up there, top of the Eastern Conference like last season. Have to see how it goes, but they're certainly good enough to make an Eastern Conference Finals run in 2025 if everything goes well for them. Another team, we have to talk about is the Indiana Pacers. How much better are their young players going to get, right? That's the question. They're kind of just running it back. Benedict Mathurin coming back from injury, right? And Jarris Walker getting another year developed. Hopefully he pans out as a forward. You have Pascal Siakam returning. You have Tyrese Halliburton a year older, developing a little more, hopefully, right? This is a team that went all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals last season and honestly played to their maximum ability. As I mentioned, they have a bunch of young players that we hope to see develop. If Halliburton takes a step up, he's already a superstar. If he takes a step up from that point guard spot, point guard 2.0, and really plays like he did at the first half of last season, if, Jarris Walker becomes a rotation piece, right? You sign James Wiseman as a backup 5. I like that move a lot. You get Benedict Mathurin back. Maybe he takes a little bit of a step up with his efficiency. There's a lot of things we could talk about the Pacers that could go perfectly healthy well for them, where they end up right back where they were last season, right? So, right off the bat right there, I just named you 6 teams that could be in the Eastern Conference Finals next season, and legitimately 2. There's even more. That's the crazy thing, right? The next team is the Miami Heat. We're going to talk about Miami Heat being really stagnant in this offseason, right? You draft Khalil Ware 15th. You gotta like the skill set he's displayed so far in the Summer League. But as far as improving the roster, we'll have to see just how that looks by the time the season starts, because at the time we're recording this video, they have made almost 0 moves. You only added Alec Burks. You lose Caleb Martin. I mean, this is a team that I think is at a talent deficit from the other teams that I've already mentioned. And listen, there's a lot of talent on this team, but they're basically just trying to outwork everybody to get, all the way to the finals again. And at a certain point, man, you just got to start winning regular season games, right? It's interesting to think about what the first round series in the 2024 playoffs could have looked like if Jimmy Butler was healthy. We won't get to see that, unfortunately, but hopefully he comes back healthy and better than ever, right? Bottom line is this team needs another, star type of scorer and playmaker, in my opinion. And I think Brandon Ingram makes a lot of sense. I've talked about that before in last video, like I said, but all of those negative things I just said about the Heat, they are clearly an option to be an Eastern Conference Finals team, no question. They make it every year you doubt them, right? So I think the more people doubt them, the more they feed into Heat culture, and then they just make it to the conference finals or the finals again, right? But if they want to win the finals, they have to add some talent, right? Some next level talent that they have other than Jimmy and Bam. So the Heat are one of the more interesting teams in the East this season for me, but certainly they have earned the right to be in that B tier, where they clearly deserve a thought to be in the ECF, like I said. And probably the last team for my list, right, is going to be the Orlando Magic, who had a stellar offseason in my personal opinion. You did a lot of locking up of players already on your roster, but obviously the big name, coming to the Magic is going to be KCP, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. That is the biggest addition in the Eastern Conference, maybe other than Mikal Bridges and Paul George, right? KCP, one of the best free agents on the market. You get him on a really good deal, 3 years, $66 million. And honestly, for the Magic, it is a perfect fit, right? This is another tough defender who's going to add a lot of defense and positional versatility, who also is an absolute sniper. And that's what the Magic needed. They needed shooters in a big way. They go out and get maybe the best one on the market, who also fits their team well defensively. So you re-sign Jonathan Isaac, you re-sign Franz Wagner, Mo Wagner, Goga Bitadze. I mean, you guys just, really locking down the core, and I love to see that for the Magic. Let's say Paolo and Franz get a little bit better. Let's say KCP's impact is exactly how we think it is. This team is better than they were last year, and last year I gave them a shot to go to the second round. They ended up losing in the first round, but listen, it was a really close series with the Cavaliers, and I think now with KCP addition, you get a little bit more matchup proof, and let's hope the young guys take a step up. Like I said, no doubt the Magic are clearly a contender in the Eastern Conference, and other than that, I think that is the B tier. The C tier, you have a couple teams in there for me. The Atlanta Hawks, right? Anytime you have Trae Young, you draft Zachary Risache. I really like Jalen Johnson. I think he's going to be a star in this league. 2 competent big men, right? You have some good depth. This team's in a little bit of a transition period for me personally. You trade DeJounte Murray away. I think if everything goes well and, everybody plays as they're supposed to for 82 games, I think you could be a play-in team, but I don't see this team contending next season. While I believe they're moving in the right direction in their franchise, I do think they need another piece or some more pieces to get to that B tier, A tier that we're talking about here. But certainly I expect them to be in the play-in tournament, no question. I mean, the Chicago Bulls, right? Another team that might make the play-in tournament. You lose DeMar DeRozan. You'll have to see how Zach LaVine plays, right? If he comes out with the Chicago Bulls, plays really well, he could earn himself a trade, and that is because no one wants to take his contract right now. That's why he's not getting traded. But I don't know, maybe he elevates them to where they were last season, a play-in spot. We'll have to see how that works out. I love their draft pick, Montes Buzelis, who's one of my favorite players in the draft. I give their pick an A+. You get Josh Giddey in, you bring him in for Alex Caruso. This is a rebuilding team at this point, but you still have some good players, right? You have Kobe White, you have Vucevic, you have Zach LaVine. We'll have to see what happens there. Pretty sure Lonzo Ball picked up his option. I'm not sure he's going to play basketball next season, but we'll have to see. So yeah, I'd say they could be a lottery team, but I expect them to make some trades too. So we'll have to see there. But other than that, the Toronto Raptors, I think, are on a C tier, right? They have some really good talent, really good young players. I think they'll develop a little bit more next season. You talk about Scotty Barnes, you talk about Emmanuel Quickley, who you extended both of them long term. You have Jakob Poeltl, right? RJ Barrett's a year older, right? So I really like what the Raptors are doing. I think they're making a lot of good choices and running this thing the right way. You draft Jacoby Walters, who's just honestly feels like a Raptor, right? And then the Charlotte Hornets, who I think are going to be a play-in team this season, because I just really like this core, right? You got LaMelo Ball. Hopefully he can stay healthy and more consistent moving forward, right? Like the 2021 version of LaMelo. You bring back Miles Bridges for a long-term extension, 3 years, $75 million. Great move. You have, Brandon Miller, a year older, who I think think is going to be a star offensive player in this league, already showing that he's an elite three-point shooter. You have two really solid big men that can just rotate in and out in Mark Williams and Nick Richards. You draft Tajon Salon to be, maybe your backup power forward. I like his skill set. He's a raw talent, could develop into a really solid player. But I just like this core for Charlotte, and I think, if everyone stays healthy, that's been their biggest issue. If everyone can stay healthy, motivated, and wanting to compete, I think they are a play-in team and of that C-tier caliber, similar to the Hawks, right? Have to see how it turns out for Charlotte. Maybe they try to do one more tank. We'll have to see. And then in the bottom tier, we have a few teams. I'm not going to talk about them too much, but you have Detroit, you have Washington, you have Brooklyn. I think Detroit, you could make a case, could be in the C tier. I'm just not too sure how I feel about that. Add guys like Tobias Harris, Malik Beasley. I just think this team's nowhere near ready to win games, and I could see a world where they're around the 10 seed, 11 seed, but I don't know. I think they make some good choices in the offseason, but bringing in some veterans to help win more games than 14, right? But I don't know. I just think, Cade Cunningham's really good, and you have a couple really good, intriguing young players and a couple veterans you brought in, but other than that, not sure if I would trust this team to make a play-in tournament next season, right? So Washington, I love what they're doing with their rebuild. They look really committed to that long-term rebuild, right? Incredible stuff there. And then Brooklyn, just selling the whole team, right? So not much to talk about it with those teams, but as I said, I think that clearly this is a top-heavy Eastern Conference still, right? That's no question. There's a lot of teams that are rebuilding at the bottom, and the good teams are going to beat up on them, right? But I think there's enough good teams to make you wonder about who's making the conference finals, right? Like, let's say there's a scenario where it's Celtics Sixers, Celtics Knicks, Celtics Bucks, Celtics Heat, Celtics Pacers, Celtics Magic, Celtics Cavs. I could see all of those realistically in a different universe, right? We have our favorites. We have Boston, Milwaukee, we have New York and Philadelphia. Those are the top four, right, in my opinion. And then you have teams directly below those teams, that are not even that far below, to be honest. In a different, in a world where something unforeseen happens and, they come out of the gate really good. Orlando, Indiana, Cleveland, and Miami, right? Those teams are certainly capable of making another big playoff run. We'll have to see how it works out. One thing's for sure, not all 8 of those teams can make the conference finals or even the second round. So we'll have to see how it ends up, but I would certainly expect all 8 of those teams to be in the 8th seeds, the first 8 seeds. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video, man. I just wanted to make this video because we did one on the West, and I think the East is going to be better next season too. Most of those 8 teams got a lot better, right? And then the bottom 8, it is what it is, right? They're just not, the East is kind of always going to be like that. But make sure you guys subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already. We upload content just like this every single day on this channel, and I wouldn't want you guys to miss it. That's where you get if you subscribe. All things NBA every day on the Dehave channel. Thank you guys for all of the support as of late. It means so much to me. You guys have been absolutely incredible, right? You guys have been killing it, and I just can't, I love you guys. Appreciate you guys so much. We're really trying to make something of this channel. That's why I work so hard. That's why I upload every day for you guys. You might disagree with a lot of my takes, but I'm just passionate about them, right? That's okay if you disagree. I mean, we could talk in the comments about it. Try to be respectful. That's all I ask. But like I said, drop a like on the video if you guys did enjoy it. Catch you guys tomorrow in the next one. Subscribe for all things NBA every day if you want to see more content like this. It is guaranteed to you every day. This is why the Eastern Conference is going to get much better next season. This is your boy D-Have, and as always, peace.